In 2020 this August, I was invited by Pop-Kultur Berlin to host a workshop, and I themed it's the Rhythm of Intercultural Collaboration, and this was with 10 different musicians from 10 different countries. And I was really excited because I think we don't realize that collaboration in music is a big slice of the privileged pie. It's access to opportunities, and somehow it responds to the same system that influences our everyday lives. And it came to my mind that maybe this could be an opportunity to dig more into how inequality actually works.
We need to be honest about the fact that there's always a hierarchy in collaborations. Yes. And it's when we ignore the power dynamics there and not take it into consideration and say that I am the dominant culture here. Yeah. How do I then collaborate with someone without drowning them out? How do I collaborate with someone without look like the puffy and burner thing? It feels like an accessory, Yeah. And how do I not use the culture that I'm collaborating with as an accessory, as a little trimming and miss nuances and really important gritty stuff in that culture, And I think we can only do that if we are really honest about the hierarchy and the power dynamics in collaborations that exist, whether it be gender, whether it be cultural, and whether it be any other dynamic that needs to be considered.
Does Burner need Puffy to make him more legitimate? I don't think so. He's not contributing anything that is going to change anything for us as this generation of Afrobeats listeners and, third generation Africans in the world seeing everything and running everything, So this is my opinion anyway, and I'm still the Burna Boy album is still growing on me. I'm trying to understand more of what's happening here. But some of these collaborations, I'm like, okay, is it just pandering? Are we using it to just gain more clout, or is there a real cultural, merger happening here? And I didn't really see that. I think the dynamics will always be different depending on who the artists are, what they want to achieve. I'm not the first to point this out, but in 2019, Beyoncé gets nominated in the Grammys for the Best Pop Album for what was basically an Afrobeats album, The Gift. In the same year, Burna Boy, who basically had the Best Afrobeats album, also gets nominated, but for the World Music category, which he lost to Angela Kidjo. We're all excited. It's a milestone for all of us, but I think in our excitement, we don't stop to think of why and how the categorization works this way.
Don't ask a lot of questions, still need answers. Promoter says he totally gets us, still need dancers to sex it up a little bit. That one has us. Don't be second guessing myself when I'm taking chances.
The problem, or we think about how to get out of the cliches of world music. So that's a topic for us. So because with our music, also especially with Eastern European, Balkan music and so on, you can play at city festivals, so at the mall, and everybody's celebrating, and that's so exotic. And I think that's also an interesting thing about thinking, that exotic thing, and to get out of it, that's how you cope with it.
The issue of world music, it's almost like that thing is created to separate it from real music, You know, it's such an awful name, you know, and I think perhaps through a bit more collaboration, people get to understand that this is just as legitimate, just as funky, just as cool as everything else. And it's just, you know, it's just being able to reach these platforms to share with the world. You know, the phrase world music became very popular in the 80s when British independent labels used it, you know, as a way to get better access to record stores and get media recognition. Artists, as usual, didn't have a say. We just had to endure it. And almost 40 years down the line, you know, it seems we still need validation from the predominant culture, you know, just to get better representation in the music industry. Good times.
At the side of the road, weeds are growing. Right beside, by the spot she lay, growing red from the blood still flowing. Long after they took her away.
I don't have to deal with it because the music that comes from where I'm from is folk music, right? It's the same, essentially the same thing.
Right.
In terms of the way that I engage with the traditions of my home geography. In world music, it's like, okay, that's all about exoticism and Orientalism. But in folk music, it's like, you know, we found out that one of the far-right political leaders was a really big folk music fan. That can so easily slip into like pure white supremacy and racism.
Right. Right.
And it's kind of the same problem, but the opposite problem. So like my question is with collaboration, like how do you keep an idea of the purity of where it comes from without being exclusive about it?
Think about country music. This multi-million-dollar industry is built on African and African American culture, same as jazz, pop, rock, you name it. But you know, the decisions are still made by white industry executives and have excluded black artists from the genre. Look what happened with Lil Nas X with his Old Town Road single. The billboards refused to categorize it as country music because it didn't contain enough elements of modern day country music. It's only when Billy Ray Cyrus gets involved and does a collab or some kind of remix is when it gets considered. And wait for it, it doesn't even get nominated. I mean, it wins 2 Grammys, but not for country music, for best pop duo and best video or something like that. So, you know, you might get through the door because collaboration gives you some kind of validation, but still not quite. So thinking about African artists is not so different what Puffy does for, say, Burna Boy, or what Drake does for Wizkid, or what Beyonce does for Tiwa Savage or Shatta Wale. There is a pattern of power and privilege, and African artists are, I guess, at the bottom of it. We've seen BET award us backstage. And so when it's about commercial power, even black entertainment functions with the same dynamics. So privilege exists in all communities.
As I come out from the darkness, then the light be too bright. Use my tuition if I know they trust my 2 eyes. The distraction they come man, so I can't stand they jump plans to stop man from keeping strong like some stunts man.
So I'm constantly navigating between fellow white musicians telling me who I am and what my identity ought to be. I mean, this has just happened to me recently. And then on the other hand, I have to deal with black people in the industry saying that the kind of music I make is not good enough for the UK. And the reason is not because the music itself is not good, but it's because it's not a great investment, because I'm mixing English with, say, Fanti or even Pidgin English, and that will keep me out of the hip hop or rap, you know, Spotify playlists, which, you know, at the end of the day are still run by some random people in an office in London somewhere. So it becomes this validation game, you know, instead of focusing on how to produce music that represents me. I'm just looking for validation to fit into certain boxes. So at the end of the day, you can see that music performance is political. And as long as there's a system of privilege, if you're coming from the countries or races that are considered inferior by those preserving that system of power, you'll get fewer opportunities, fewer investments, less visibility and representation unless we get that invaluable external validation. And then they make you feel like, oh, you should be grateful. And that sucks.
Second